Welcome to the Book Reading and Summaries channel.
Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes Part 2. Chapter 1 Cervantes addresses the reader. Part 2 begins with Cervantes speaking directly to the reader. He explains that Part 1 of Don Quixote has already been published across Spain and other countries. It is famous. He playfully comments on critics, imitators, and mistakes in the first volume. He promises clarity, authenticity, and improvement in Part 2. He also warns against plagiarists who may try to continue the story without his permission. This is one of the earliest examples of metafiction in literature. Chapter 2 The Return of the Priest and Barber. Don Quixote recovers at home after his enchantment and the journey back in a cage. The priest and barber visit him, trying to dissuade him from future adventures. Don Quixote seems calmer, but it is clear the madness remains. He argues elegantly in defense of knighthood. He is proud that his deeds are becoming legendary. Sancho Panza appears and insists on his reward, his island. Don Quixote reassures him that the promise still stands. The priest worries that Sancho's foolish loyalty encourages Don Quixote's delusions. Chapter 3 Sancho's domestic troubles. Sancho returns home to his wife, Teresa Panza. She asks about the adventures and the supposed island he will govern. Sancho braggingly describes his future position, saying he will make her a countess. Teresa is skeptical and practical. She is proud of Sancho but afraid Don Quixote will lead him to ruin. She warns him to remember his poverty and not chase impossible dreams. Still, Sancho's fantasies overpower her reasoning, and he insists that a governor's wife must dress well. Chapter 4 Samson Carrasco appears. A new character enters, Samson Carrasco, a young scholar who studied at Salamanca. He has read Part 1 of the novel and is delighted to meet the famous Don Quixote. He tells Don Quixote that his adventures are celebrated throughout Spain. Don Quixote is thrilled to learn he is a published hero. Samson also tells him that many want a sequel, a new set of adventures. Sancho dances with joy upon hearing of their fame. Samson's admiration inflames Don Quixote's desire to return to knight-errantry immediately. Chapter 5 Teresa counsels Sancho again. Sancho tells Teresa they are leaving again. She protests. What about their children? What if he dies? What if he's beaten again? Sancho insists that becoming governor is his destiny. Teresa gives up arguing and gives him a bag of food. She is sad but hopeful that fortune may bless them. Chapter 6 Don Quixote prepares for the second sally. Don Quixote prepares for a second great adventure. He chooses a new name, the Knight of the Lions, later explained. He cleans his armor. He writes notes explaining his absence. He meditates on Dulcinea. Samson Carrasco privately encourages the journey, but for a secret reason. Right arrow he intends to cure Don Quixote by defeating him in combat and forcing him to return home. This sets the stage for one of the major plots of Part 2. Chapter 7 Sancho abandons his family. Sancho sneaks away early in the morning, despite Teresa's tears. Their daughter Sanchica wakes up and cries for him. Sancho feels conflicted but dreams of riches and power. He rides Dapple to Don Quixote's house, ready to depart. Don Quixote is delighted and declares this the beginning of his greatest adventure. Chapter 8 The second sally begins. Don Quixote and Sancho set out again, better prepared than before. They have money, clean clothing, and supplies thanks to Sancho's wife and Don Quixote's niece. They discuss Dulcinea. Sancho admits he never really delivered Don Quixote's letter and made up the entire visit. Don Quixote becomes angry, and Sancho fears punishment. Eventually, Don Quixote accepts Sancho's apology. The two journey toward Toboso, where Don Quixote plans to visit Dulcinea and ask for her blessing before beginning new adventures. Chapter 9 The Search for Dulcinea. In Toboso, Don Quixote is anxious and reverent, believing Dulcinea lives in a grand palace. Sancho panics because he knows she is simply a farm girl and that Don Quixote's romantic fantasies cannot match reality. He avoids showing him Dulcinea's real home and hides among streets, pretending he is searching for her house. Don Quixote becomes suspicious, but Sancho invents excuse after excuse. Eventually, Sancho devises a trick. He will present the first peasant girl they see as Dulcinea. Chapter 10: The Enchantment of Dulcinea. Sancho convinces 3 peasant girls on donkeys to approach them. One is presented as Dulcinea. To Don Quixote, the girl appears coarse, unwashed, unrefined, riding a cheap donkey, speaking crudely. Horrified, Don Quixote thinks she has been enchanted by an evil magician. He believes the sorcerers who hate him transformed Dulcinea into a farm girl to distress him. Sancho goes along with the fantasy to avoid being punished. This event becomes one of the major running jokes and emotional tragedies of Part 2. Chapter 11: Don Quixote's melancholy about Dulcinea. After the enchanted Dulcinea incident, Don Quixote falls into sadness. He believes powerful wizards are determined to torment him by disguising his beloved. Sancho tries to comfort him but only deepens the confusion. Don Quixote continues reflecting on the noble suffering of knights. He claims true lovers must endure sorrow, and therefore his sadness is a sign of his greatness. Sancho privately feels guilty because he caused the illusion. He fears the lie may grow out of control. Chapter 12: The Arrival of the Knight of the Wood. Don Quixote and Sancho camp overnight in the forest. They hear voices. Investigating, they encounter a knight calling himself the Knight of the Wood, or of the Mirrors, and his squire. The knight speaks arrogantly, bragging that he defeated Don Quixote weeks earlier. Don Quixote becomes furious. He knows this is impossible. Sancho and the knight's squire also trade insults and compare wages. The 2 pairs agree to duel in the morning. Chapter 13: The Knight of the Mirrors Unmasked. At dawn, Don Quixote and the Knight of the Mirrors prepare for combat. The rival knight's armor is exaggerated and covered with reflective surfaces. In the duel, the Knight of the Mirrors charges with great confidence. Don Quixote unexpectedly defeats him easily. When the fallen knight is unmasked, Don Quixote and Sancho discover he is Samson Carrasco, their friend from home. Samson had disguised himself to defeat Don Quixote and force him to return home, a plan encouraged by the priest and barber, but failed miserably. Ashamed, Samson pretends he is not Carrasco and retreats in humiliation. Don Quixote claims this victory proves he is destined for great glory. Chapter 14: A Return to Philosophy. Don Quixote, feeling victorious, gives another long lecture about knighthood, virtue, and destiny. Sancho listens happily, believing they are now unstoppable. They ride onward, encountering peasants and travelers who admire Don Quixote's impressive posture and armor. Don Quixote practices speeches he will make before Dulcinea once her enchantment is broken. Sancho continues to dream of governorship. Chapter 15: The Lions. A famous episode begins. Don Quixote encounters wagons transporting 2 fierce African lions as a gift to the king. Interpreting this situation as a test of courage, Don Quixote challenges the lions to combat, despite the lion keeper begging him to stop. The lion keeper opens the cage. The lion simply yawns, turns around, and lies down, uninterested. Don Quixote claims victory, declaring himself the Knight of the Lions. He forces the lion keeper to testify to his bravery. The owner of the wagons praises his courage, and Don Quixote beams with pride. Sancho, terrified moments earlier, now basks in his master's heroic reputation. Chapter 16: Don Quixote's Growing Fame. As they travel, Don Quixote and Sancho meet villagers who recognize them from stories about their first adventures. Cervantes continues the metafictional theme. Part 1 of the novel exists inside Part 2. People gossip about the windmills, the galley slaves, the sheep battle, Sancho's blanket tossing. Sancho becomes proud to be a celebrity squire. Don Quixote, swelling with dignity, calls fame the nourishment of the soul. Chapter 17: With Don Diego de Miranda. Don Quixote meets a refined gentleman named Don Diego de Miranda, known as the Knight of the Green Coat because of his attire. The 2 men talk at length about education, literature, knighthood, and moral philosophy. Don Diego is surprised by Don Quixote's intelligence. He expected a total madman, but Don Quixote speaks eloquently on many subjects. Sancho entertains Don Diego's servants with hilarious comments. Don Diego invites both travelers to stay at his estate. At the house, Don Quixote's oddities amuse Don Diego's son, a student poet. Don Quixote gives him sincere and surprisingly sensible advice about literature. Chapter 18, The Village of the Ducks. Don Quixote and Sancho depart from Don Diego's home and journey to a small village famous for an annual ducking contest. Young men on horseback try to snatch ribbons tied to a goose as it is dragged over water. Don Quixote interprets the spectacle as a test of heroic skill. He gives long, poetic commentary on the bravery of the youths. Sancho enjoys the excitement but is confused by Don Quixote's symbolism. The villagers admire Don Quixote's noble appearance and take him for an eccentric but honorable nobleman. Chapter 19, Mestranza and the Squire's Dispute. On the road, Don Quixote meets members of the Mestranza, an elite military brotherhood. He discusses arms and honor with them, delivering another speech on the superiority of knights-errant to all other warriors. Meanwhile, Sancho quarrels with their servants. Insults escalate. Don Quixote intervenes to protect Sancho, praising his loyalty. This chapter reveals how deeply dependent the two men have become on one another. Chapter 20, Master Pedro's Puppet Show. This is one of the most famous episodes in Part 2. Don Quixote and Sancho encounter a traveling puppeteer named Master Pedro. He presents a puppet show depicting the rescue of a Christian lady by the legendary knight Don Quixote. During the performance, Don Quixote becomes increasingly emotional. He believes the puppets are real beings suffering injustice. When Moors appear in the story, Don Quixote suddenly leaps up, draws his sword, and attacks the puppets, destroying the theater and scattering props everywhere. Master Pedro cries out in horror. The show is ruined. To everyone's astonishment, the puppeteer's assistant is revealed to be a disguised monkey trainer, and his monkey supposedly tells fortunes. Don Quixote apologizes and promises to pay for the destroyed puppets. Sancho is humiliated but loyal. The monkey later whispers predictions about Don Quixote's future, adding another layer of eerie magic and humor. Chapter 21, Don Quixote and Master Pedro settle accounts. After Don Quixote destroys Master Pedro's puppet theater, he tries to compensate him financially. A long argument follows about the cost of each puppet. Don Quixote overestimates their worth. Sancho tries to negotiate lower prices. Master Pedro attempts to remain polite while clearly annoyed. Eventually Don Quixote pays him generously. Only later does the reader learn that Master Pedro is actually Ginés de Pasamonte, the criminal Don Quixote freed in Part 1, now reinvented as a puppeteer. Sancho, still clueless, believes Master Pedro's monkey truly tells fortunes. Chapter 22, The Bandits of the Sierra Morena. Don Quixote and Sancho wander into the mountains of the Sierra Morena, where real danger exists. They meet the notorious bandit leader Roque Guinart. Roque is surprisingly noble, intelligent, and philosophical. He admires Don Quixote's courage and speaks openly about the moral contradictions of a bandit's life. Don Quixote responds with speeches about justice and honor, while Sancho approaches the outlaws with terror. Roque treats both men kindly and protects them from robbery. This chapter mirrors earlier episodes with criminals, but with greater depth and maturity, showing Part 2's more serious tone. Chapter 23, Roque's Court of Justice. Roque holds a kind of open-air tribunal among his bandits. They bring prisoners before him, and he judges their crimes on the spot. Don Quixote is impressed, claiming Roque has the makings of a great knight-errant. Roque laughs, telling him that knighthood is for the innocent, not outlaws. Sancho overhears Roque's men debating philosophy, wealth, and destiny. He finds the bandits confusing but strangely respectful. Roque escorts Don Quixote and Sancho safely out of the mountains, guiding them toward Barcelona. Barcelona is crucial, it is where Don Quixote will meet his ultimate fate. Chapter 24, Arrival in Barcelona. Don Quixote sees the sea for the first time and is overwhelmed with awe. Barcelona appears vibrant, busy, and cosmopolitan. A group of young nobles recognizes Don Quixote from published stories and greets him with honor and amusement. They escort him into the city, treating him like a celebrity. He is amazed by cannons, ships, sailors, and foreign merchants. The noise and energy of Barcelona enchant him. Sancho marvels at the food and wealth, believing his governorship must be close at hand. Chapter 25 Don Quixote visits a printing house. A metafictional episode unfolds. Don Quixote visits a printing shop in Barcelona and discovers printers working on a false sequel to Don Quixote, published by another author under the name Avellaneda. This counterfeit part 2 deeply angers him. He calls it full of lies and insults. Cervantes uses this chapter to attack the real-life plagiarist who published an unauthorized sequel before Cervantes released his own part 2. Sancho is also furious, especially at how the fake book portrays him as a greedy, stupid coward. This discovery strengthens Don Quixote's desire to live out true adventures that will correct the lies of the false author. Chapter 26 Don Quixote meets the Knight of the White Moon. On the beach of Barcelona, Don Quixote encounters a mysterious knight dressed in brilliant white armor, the Knight of the White Moon. The stranger challenges Don Quixote to single combat, declaring, "Dulcinea del Toboso is not the most beautiful woman in the world. My lady is." Don Quixote, unable to tolerate such blasphemy, accepts. People gather on the beach to watch. The duel is fast and shocking. They charge. Don Quixote is thrown from his horse. The Knight of the White Moon holds a lance to his face. Don Quixote is defeated. The knight then declares a condition: Don Quixote must return home and abandon knight-errantry for 1 full year. Don Quixote, broken and stunned, agrees. The Knight of the White Moon later reveals himself privately to the audience, but not to Don Quixote. Right arrow, he is Samson Carrasco again, now successful in his plan to cure Don Quixote. Chapter 27 The Humiliation of Defeat. Don Quixote wakes in bed, grieving deeply. For the first time, his spirit feels shattered. He blames enchantment, fate, or divine judgment. Sancho tries to comfort him, insisting that even the greatest knights fall. Don Quixote reluctantly accepts that he must obey the victor's conditions. He prepares to go home, believing his career as a knight may truly be ending. Barcelona's citizens continue to treat him kindly, though with a mix of respect and humor. Chapter 28 Sancho's growing realism. Sancho reflects that their time may be over. He wonders what will become of his dreams of governorship. He begins to show mature wisdom. He admits they have made many mistakes. He understands now that knighthood is dangerous and unpredictable. He realizes he cares more about Don Quixote's health than about an island. But he still loves adventure and is torn between realism and loyalty. Don Quixote tells him that a good squire deserves reward, and that perhaps God will still make him governor one day. Chapter 29 The Duke and Duchess return to the story. On their journey back toward La Mancha, Don Quixote and Sancho pass again near the lands of the Duke and Duchess, the wealthy nobles who previously played cruel games on them. They hear news of further adventures the Duke and Duchess have invented in their absence: illusions, jokes, and mockeries performed by their servants pretending to be enchanters. Though Don Quixote and Sancho do not revisit the palace in this section, they understand more clearly now how cruelly they were manipulated. Don Quixote admits that he had been naive. Sancho grows angry remembering the humiliations he suffered. This marks a turning point. Both characters develop greater wisdom. Chapter 30 A Return to Dulcinea's Enchantment. As they near home, Don Quixote brings up the subject of Dulcinea. He feels guilty for failing to break her enchantment. Sancho, trapped in his original lie, claims that she still appears to him as a peasant girl. Don Quixote is heartbroken. He believes his failure to lift Dulcinea's enchantment is connected to his defeat by the Knight of the White Moon. He resolves, even though he is returning home, to fast and perform penance as a holy knight would. Sancho tries to lighten his mood with humor, but Don Quixote speaks more seriously than ever before. The tone becomes somber. The end approaches. Chapter 31 The Road Home. Don Quixote and Sancho continue their journey toward La Mancha. Don Quixote is quieter than ever before. His pride is wounded. He replays his defeat by the Knight of the White Moon, Samson Carrasco, again and again. Sancho attempts jokes, songs, and moral sayings, but Don Quixote remains melancholic. The narrator notes that for the first time in the novel, Don Quixote seems to see the world as it is, not as a knight-errant would. Chapter 32, A Brief Return to Adventure. Even though Don Quixote is supposed to give up knight-errantry for 1 year, he cannot help interpreting certain events as potential adventures. They encounter villagers escorting a young man who has been accused of refusing to marry a girl he seduced. Don Quixote tries to give a speech about honor and virtue but realizes halfway through that, because he is defeated, he has no right to intervene. This frustrates him deeply. Sancho privately thinks that perhaps this defeat really was God's way of ending their dangerous adventures. Chapter 33, Sancho's Reflections on Governorship. Sancho reminds Don Quixote of the times he served faithfully. The blanket tossing, hunger, beatings, endless miles walked. Don Quixote apologizes for never giving him his promised reward. Sancho replies that his true reward has been friendship and experience, though he still wishes an island had been possible. This moment shows how far Sancho has matured. He can now see the difference between fantasy and reality. Chapter 34, The Hospitality of a Rich Farmer. They are welcomed by a wealthy farmer named Don Antonio. Don Antonio recognizes Don Quixote from the famous book and invites him to stay. Sancho entertains the household with stories of his time as governor, from earlier in Part 2, and claims he learned that power brings trouble. Don Quixote, however, becomes more depressed when he hears others retell his own adventures as humorous stories. For the first time, he realizes people see him as a fool. Chapter 35, The Return of Dona Rodriguez. Dona Rodriguez, a servant woman from the Duke and Duchess's court, appears on the road. She had once begged Don Quixote to help her daughter, who had been dishonored. She now reports that the Duke and Duchess continued to mock her cruelly after Don Quixote left. She thanks Don Quixote for trying to defend her earlier. Don Quixote blushes with shame. He cannot help her now because of his vow to abandon knight-errantry for a year. He finally understands that the Duke and Duchess treated him like a toy. Chapter 36, Sancho's Wisdom. Sancho comforts Don Quixote with a surprisingly philosophical speech. He says, "Wealth and nobility are illusions. True happiness comes from inner peace. They have done enough adventuring. It is time to rest." Don Quixote is amazed at Sancho's transformation from a fool into a kind of rustic sage. Chapters 37 to 40, Approaching Home. Don Quixote gradually weakens. He does not want to admit it, but his energy is fading. Sancho fears he might be ill. They meet the priest and barber again, who are shocked at Don Quixote's thin, worn appearance. He confesses that knight-errantry has brought him more sorrow than glory. The priest promises to help him recover physically and spiritually. Sancho walks beside Rocinante, patting the horse and whispering encouragements to both the horse and his master. Chapter 41, Arrival in the Village. When they finally arrive at their village, the housekeeper bursts into tears. The niece embraces Don Quixote. Neighbors gather to hear the latest absurd stories. Sancho becomes a local hero. Don Quixote collapses into bed. Everyone agrees he needs rest. Sancho stays by his bedside continually. Chapters 42 to 50, Don Quixote declines. Over the next days, Don Quixote becomes physically weaker but mentally clearer. He confesses that Dulcinea was never enchanted, she was simply an ordinary farm girl. This realization humiliates him. He tells Sancho, "I was mad, and now I am sane." But this return to sanity coincides with physical decline. Sancho is horrified. He does not want Don Quixote to be sane at this cost. He begs him, "Let us go back to the fields. Let us seek Dulcinea. Let us be knights again." Don Quixote smiles weakly. "No, Sancho. I now see the truth." Chapters 51 to 55, Sancho tries to save the dream. Sancho tries everything to revive Don Quixote's spirit. He suggests a new quest. He promises to take Don Quixote to see giants. He insists Dulcinea can still be disenchanted. He proposes a new island for them to rule together. But Don Quixote gently refuses each idea. His voice grows fainter. Sancho weeps openly. Chapter 56, The Testament of Don Quixote. Sensing his end, Don Quixote asks the priest, barber, Sancho, and his niece to witness his will. In it, he confesses his madness, renounces all knight-errantry, leaves money to Sancho for his loyalty, requests forgiveness from everyone, orders that no more chivalric books be allowed in his home. Everyone in the room cries, even the skeptical priest. Sancho begs him one last time. Do not die, sir. Let us go once more to the countryside as knights. There are greater adventures waiting. Don Quixote shakes his head. Do not speak of adventures, Sancho. They are all foolishness. Chapter 57, Don Quixote's Final Hours. Don Quixote asks for quiet. He prays. He thanks Sancho for being his faithful companion. Forgive me for leading you into madness. Sancho replies. I was not mad, but went with you willingly. If your madness was sweet, your sanity is bitter. The room falls silent. Don Quixote asks them to remember him not as a knight, but as Alonso Quixano the Good. Chapter 58, Don Quixote dies. After sleeping peacefully, Don Quixote awakens, smiles at his niece and Sancho, and whispers, My journey ends. He dies quietly, without drama. Sancho cries uncontrollably. He says he would rather see his master mad and alive than sane and dead. Even the priest admits that Don Quixote was a noble soul misled by imagination. Chapter 59, The Village Mourns. The village buries him with respect. Many neighbors gather to tell stories of his strange but honorable adventures. The priest praises him as a man who always tried to do good. The barber says that even madness could not hide his virtues. Sancho declares, There is no greater master than mine. Rocinante, Don Quixote's loyal horse, grazes quietly by the house, as if mourning too. Chapter 60, Cervantes closes the book. Cervantes ends the novel by insisting that this is the true and final history of Don Quixote. He forbids any future author from resurrecting the knight or continuing the tale. The last line declares that Don Quixote's story ends with him, and no one has the right to bring him back. This is a direct strike at the false sequel writer Avellaneda. White heavy check marked the end of Don Quixote. Don Quixote began as a madman imitating books, but he ended as a wise man healed from illusion, though at the cost of his life. Sancho began as a gullible peasant, but ended as a compassionate, loyal, and surprisingly wise friend. Together they formed one of literature's greatest partnerships.
Subscribe to the channel to motivate us to create more useful videos.